During World War II, whilst Britain stood defiant against Nazi tyranny, a small but infamous group of British citizens chose betrayal over patriotism. These individuals, swayed by ideology, ambition, or coercion, offered their services to Adolf Hitler's regime. Their treachery took various forms: spying, propaganda, sabotage, and often ended in capture, trial, and execution. In this video, we delve into the stories of those World War II traitors, exploring their crimes, the justice that followed, and the historical context in which Britain sought to protect its national security through swift and final punishment. To support our channel, please click subscribe. The United Kingdom faced not only the external threat of German invasion, but also internal dangers posed by collaborators and spies. To deal with this, the British government invoked severe legal measures. The most prominent among these was the Treason Act, which, although ancient, was still enforceable and carried the death penalty. Alongside this, the Treachery Act of 1940 was introduced specifically for wartime conditions, allowing the execution of spies and saboteurs more efficiently. Between 1960 and 1946, at least 16 individuals were executed in Britain for treachery or espionage, with others receiving lengthy prison sentences. Most of these executions were carried out by hanging at Wandsworth, Pentonville, or HM Prison, Wormwood Scrubs. Perhaps the most infamous British traitor of the war was William Joyce, known to millions by his radio persona Lord Haw Haw. Born in the United States and raised in Ireland and England, Joyce was a fervent fascist who fled to Germany in 1939. There he began broadcasting Nazi propaganda in English to Britain, urging surrender and demoralising the public. His broadcasts became notorious for their sneering tone and lies, though many Britons listened out of curiosity or dark amusement. Captured by British forces in 1945 near the German-Danish border, Joyce was returned to Britain and charged with treason, despite having obtained a US passport and also a German one. The prosecution argued that he had held a British passport at the outbreak of war and therefore owed allegiance to the Crown, King George VI. The Old Bailey trial in September 1945 ended with a guilty verdict. Joyce was hanged at Wandsworth Prison on January 3rd, 1946, by the famed hangman Albert Pierrepoint. His case remains controversial in legal circles, but he is considered a symbol of British wartime betrayal. Another high-profile British traitor executed for treason was John Amery, the son of Leo Amery, a Conservative MP and cabinet minister. Unlike Joyce, Amery came from the British elite, but was drawn to fascism and supported Franco in Spain before aligning himself with Hitler. In 1942, he began working with the Germans to recruit British prisoners of war to form a so-called British Free Corps to fight alongside the Waffen-SS. He also made propaganda broadcasts and advocated for an Anglo-German alliance against the Soviet Union. Amery's efforts met limited success. Only a handful of prisoners of war showed any interest, and fewer than 30 ever joined his unit. Nevertheless, his treason was undeniable. Captured in Italy in 1945 and then handed over to the British, Amery pleaded guilty to 8 counts of treason, thereby avoiding a lengthy trial. He was executed at Wandsworth Prison on December 19, 1945 by Albert Pierrepoint. Notably, Amery greeted his executioner with the infamous words, "Mr. Pierrepoint, I've always wanted to meet you, but not, of course, under these circumstances." He faced his death with a strange calmness, possibly influenced by a romantic notion of martyrdom. The only British soldier to be executed for treachery during World War II was Theodore Schurch, a former member of the Royal Army Service Corps. Born in 1918 in Hammersmith, London, Schurch had pro-fascist sympathies, and after being captured by Axis forces in North Africa, he offered his services to Italian and German intelligence. Between 1942 and 1945, he posed as a fellow prisoner of war, to gain the trust of other captured Allied personnel, including members of Special Operations Executive (SOE), and pass information to his Nazi handlers. His betrayal was especially dangerous, as it endangered covert operations and lives. Schurch was arrested in Italy and then flown back to Britain, where he was tried under the Treachery Act of 1940. He was found guilty and was then sentenced to death. On January 4, 1946, the day after William Joyce's execution, Schurch was hanged at Her Majesty's Prison, Pentonville, again by Albert Pierrepoint. He was the last person executed in Britain for their wartime treachery. Though Joyce, Amery and Schurch are the most prominent three, other Britons paid the ultimate price for betrayal. George Johnson Armstrong was the first British citizen executed under the Treachery Act. A mechanical engineer, he had been a member of the British Union of Fascists and attempted to contact the German consul in Boston during a trip to the United States, offering his assistance to the Nazis. He was arrested by the FBI and deported to Britain, where he was tried and found guilty of attempting to assist the enemy. Armstrong was hanged at Wandsworth on July 10, 1941. His execution was deliberately publicised to deter others from similar acts. Several foreign agents and British collaborators were hanged during the early war years, most of them between 1941 to 1942. These included Joseph Jacobs, a German spy who was the last person executed at the Tower of London by firing squad on August 15, 1941. Werner Walti, Duncan Scott Ford and Karl Richter, both of whom spied for Nazi Germany, were executed too. Some saboteurs were also executed too, and others were turned into double agents. While many of these figures were foreign nationals, some were British-born and had actively aided enemy intelligence, making their deaths symbolic warnings of the price of treason. Britain's Internal Security Service, MI5, played a crucial role in identifying and neutralising threats. Not all captured agents were executed. Many were turned, as mentioned, into double agents, feeding misinformation back to Germany. This network, called the Double Cross System, was instrumental in misleading the Nazis about the D-Day landings. Captured spies who cooperated, such as Eddie Chapman, Agent Zigzag, was spared and often celebrated for their post-defection service. This distinction between those who betrayed and those who could be reformed reflected MI5's calculated pragmatism in wartime. The execution of traitors in Britain during and shortly after the war was largely accepted by the public. The horrors of Nazi occupation in Europe, the Blitz, and the sacrifices made by Allied forces created little tolerance for those who had betrayed their fellow citizens. Yet in the post-war years, a more nuanced understanding emerged. The ethics of capital punishment came under scrutiny, and the motivations of some traitors, especially those who were suffering from mental illness or disillusionment, were re-examined. John Amery's biographers, for example, have debated whether he was actually mentally stable when he committed treason. Still, for most of the British public, these figures remained synonymous with betrayal. Their executions served a broader wartime narrative that loyalty to one's country must be absolute when the nation is under existential threat. The executions of Britain's World War II traitors was not merely a judicial punishment, they were declarations. In a time of profound crisis, when bombs fell on cities and millions fought on land, sea and air, the betrayal of countrymen was the gravest sin. Whether motivated by ideology, delusionment or despair, these individuals crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Their trials and hangings sent a clear message that in the face of tyranny, unity was non-negotiable. Though their stories are now history, the echoes of their decisions and the gallows that awaited them remain potent reminders of the price of treachery in wartime Britain. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.